Gun deaths in the US have reached the highest rates in 50 years.
There are several students who have been shot.
Something has to change.
It's a pressing issue that needs careful consideration.
We need guns because, to be quite frank, it's scary living in my neighborhood.
At The Economist's Open Future Festival, gun control activists joined Idris Kaloun, The Economist's policy correspondent, on stage in Chicago to talk about what gun violence looks like in America.
We're coming to you with the worst kind of breaking news imaginable.
There were nearly 40,000 fatal shootings in America in 2017. And while the news coverage mainly focuses on mass shootings, the data tell a different story. Peter Ambler, executive director of Giffords, a gun safety advocacy group, wants the facts to be central to the debate.
These mass shootings that happen that terrify the country and are very important to be concerned about actually only represent a relatively small number of the overall nearly 40,000 gun deaths. A mass shooting of catastrophic proportions happens every day in this country. That is as tragic, as troubling, and as challenging to our moral compass as a nation as these mass shootings.
Mass shootings have been getting worse. But these tragedies only account for a small proportion of America's gun fatalities. Of the total number of gun deaths in 2017, less than 0.3% occurred in mass shootings, where 3 or more people were killed with a gun. Other homicides were 36%. The majority of gun deaths are actually suicides. They made up 60% of the total in 2017. An issue that Marge Toure, who runs an organisation fighting to stop gun regulation, says is often overlooked.
Marge, I want to talk to you. I wanted to get a sense of what you think goes wrong with the way that people analyze the problem of gun violence, particularly in American cities.
One of the major ways that it's wrong is we keep calling it gun violence, and then there's a bunch of faulty stats behind it. So, for example, the 30 to 40,000 deaths annually, conveniently 60% of those being suicides, keep getting left out of that conversation. That speaks to the mental health component.
Mental health is a major consideration in the conversation around gun control. And there is a correlation between the number of people who died by suicide and the number of gun control laws a state has. These represent all of America's 50 states. The stricter a state's gun regulation, the fewer suicides occur. With 107 laws, California had the most restrictions on gun use in 2017. The state also had one of the lowest suicide rates in the country. Montana had the highest suicide rate and only 4 laws restricting gun use. The data also reveal another clear trend, a big racial disparity in gun deaths. While white men account for the majority of gun-related suicides, Black Americans are 10 times more likely to die from gun-related homicide than white Americans. Bria Smith campaigns for policy to focus more on gun violence in inner cities, especially in Black communities.
Bria, you've consistently made the point that the gun violence prevention movement should not be a whitewashed one. Guns are still the leading cause of death for Black children and teenagers, 14 times the rate of white children. Here in Chicago, 400 people roughly have died this year because of guns, and of them, close to 300 were Black. Tell us how you channel the energy that exists within the movement into fully reckoning with those sober statistics and into making a movement that is not whitewashed.
And I think channeling that energy has always been hard for me, because if you're living in an inner city and you're seeing pictures or videos of like kids from Parkland who are white, and they're getting all the coverage, they're getting all the national attention, and they're leading the conversation of gun violence. When you're saying to yourself, I've been doing this work for years before people even thought to say, I'm scared to go to school. I was scared to walk to the corner to go to the bus to get, to take me to school. How are we gonna have like our allies with the power and the privilege and the platform to speak for people who can't be invited to the table?
67% of Americans think gun laws should be stricter. Only 10% would like to see gun laws relaxed. The rest think they should stay the same. But there is vigorous debate about the best way to satisfy the wishes of the majority of Americans. Marge Toure thinks regulation that exists today unfairly targets Black communities. In Illinois, around 60% of homicides occur in Chicago.
Most of the gun restrictions are in Chicago. It is a contradiction. Adding more legislation to the scenario that does not solve it. Telling black people that they shouldn't have firearms while respecting their Second Amendment rights to defend themselves from the bad guy is the fundamental flaw.
Bria, I saw you nodding along, and that's interesting. You might think that the two of you would disagree. But
March for Lives, we're a bipartisan organization. People have this big stigma that anybody in the gun violence movement, we want to take away guns, right? We need guns because, to be quite frank, it's scary living in my neighborhood, and we need to protect ourselves.
In essence, what you're saying is you can't legislate evil.
One potential solution for getting guns off the streets is gun buybacks, when the government makes it compulsory for people to hand in certain types of guns and compensates the owners for doing so.
I think that the discussion that you're seeing right now around mandatory buybacks is sort of symptomatic of this sort of political shift in the political power that we now have in the gun safety side. But I don't think it is sort of as significant a fissure in the gun safety space as, say, Medicare for All or Green New Deal would be in the healthcare and energy spaces, respectively.
Today, the vast majority of Americans, both Democrats and Republicans, support stricter gun laws. Democratic presidential candidates are proposing sweeping changes, from gun buybacks and assault weapon bans to universal background checks. But Congress continues to be resistant to gun control. This will be a key issue ahead of the 2020 presidential election. Politicians need to respond to the public's concerns.